U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi was set to visit Taiwan on Tuesday, three sources said, as the U.S. said it wouldn't be intimidated by Chinese threats to not sit idly by if she made the trip to visit the self-ruled island claimed by Beijing. One source told Reuters that the United States had informed some allies about Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Two other sources said Pelosi was scheduled to meet a small group of activists who are outspoken about China's human rights record during her stay in Taiwan, possibly on Wednesday. Taiwan's foreign ministry said it had no comment on reports of Pelosi's travel plans. Pelosi's office said on Sunday that she was leading a congressional delegation to the region that would include visits to Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. It did not mention Taiwan. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said at a daily briefing on Monday that a Pelosi visit would lead to serious consequences.
If U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Pelosi goes to Taiwan, it will be a gross interference in China's internal affairs, seriously undermine China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, wantonly trample on the One China principle, seriously threaten peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, and seriously damage China-US relations, leading to very serious developments and consequences. We would like to tell the United States once again that China is standing by, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army will never sit idly by, and that China will take resolute responses and strong countermeasures to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Beijing considers Taiwan to be part of its territory and has never renounced using force to bring the island under its control. Taiwan rejects China's sovereignty claims and says only its people can decide the island's future. China views visits by U.S. officials to Taiwan as sending an encouraging signal to the pro-independence camp in the island. Washington does not have official diplomatic ties with the island, but is bound by U.S. law to provide it with the means to defend itself. A video by the People's Liberation Army, which showed scenes of military exercises and preparations, was posted to state media sites Monday evening. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby dismissed China's rhetoric as groundless and inappropriate at a White House press briefing Monday.
The Speaker has the right to visit Taiwan, and the Speaker of the House has visited Taiwan before without incident, as have many members of Congress, including this year. Put simply, there is no reason for Beijing to turn a potential visit consistent with long-standing U.S. policy into some sort of crisis or conflict.
Republican Newt Gingrich was the last House Speaker to visit Taiwan in 1997. A visit by Pelosi, who is second in the line of succession to the U.S. presidency and a longtime critic of China, would come amid worsening ties between Washington and Beijing.
Wall Street ended slightly lower after a volatile session Monday, as investors digested the U.S. stock market's biggest monthly gains in 2 years. The Dow and NASDAQ ended down fractionally, while the S&P 500 ended a little more than 0.25% lower, as some investors became more cautious in the wake of last week's rally. Peter Anderson is founder of Anderson Capital Management.
This is a very, very unusual period. I think we have to throw out the so-called playbooks of our past experience, simply because we are emerging from a worldwide pandemic. And although I would like to desperately find patterns in what we are experiencing, it's anybody's guess the day-to-day volatility. I think some days we will find periods of very smooth, gradually rising stocks, other days the opposite. And then, of course, we'll find days where it's all over the map, so to speak, with very, very large volatility, depending upon any tiny or large news item of the day. It's a very, very sensitive market right now we're experiencing.
Oil prices fell Monday on demand concerns, which in turn weighed on energy stocks, making the sector the deepest decliner on Monday. Shares of Boeing gained after Reuters reported the FAA approved the plane maker's inspection and modification plan to resume deliveries of the 787 Dreamliner. Shares of Roku, which plummeted more than 20% on Friday after posting dismal results, gained big Monday after Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation Fund said it was adding to its position following the steep sell-off. And shares of Pinterest rose Monday but soared 20% higher in extended trading after the Pinboard platform posted better than expected user numbers, even as earnings and revenue came in lower than estimates.
Liliane Cheaito has suffered silently in hospital ever since the Beirut port explosion in 2020. Her scratchy, laboured breathing continues until a nurse appears at her bedside to empty her lungs of built-up phlegm. She sustained severe damage to her frontal brain lobes, leaving her in a months-long coma. She needed 3 operations. But the quiet halls of the American University of Beirut's medical centre have not shielded her from Lebanon's economic collapse. Instead, Cheaito and her family are trapped in their country's multiple crises. From a deteriorating health sector that is struggling to treat her, to paralysed government institutions and banks that have frozen her family out of their savings. Cheaito's sister, Nasma, says she reflects the struggle of everyday people.
Liliane really represents our suffering. She represents how the Lebanese people, how we are still resisting through everything we are going through. They deprived us of our money. They are depriving us of access to healthcare and women's rights. Liliane represents all these things because she is suffering from all of them. She really represents the agony of the Lebanese people.
Cheaito's hospital informed the family in February that the charity covering the costs of her stay could no longer afford to do so. She will have to move to a specialised rehabilitation centre to pursue her treatment, something they cannot pay for, even though Cheaito's sister has the savings to help. Since the financial crisis took hold in 2019, many of Lebanon's banks have frozen clients out of their hard currency through informal capital controls. They cap monthly cash withdrawals in US dollars and allow limited amounts to be withdrawn in Lebanese pounds at a rate much lower than the parallel market rate. Cheaito's family and lawyer say the restrictions are hampering her recovery, as withdrawing the funds at the lower rate would slash their worth. He's co-founder of the Lebanese Depositors Union, Fouad Debs.
Nawal has saved money, and now she needs the money to spend on Liliane. But the bank, and in this case it's Bank RHD, one of the biggest banks in Lebanon, and probably one of the banks that has done the most violations, that is not letting Nawal withdraw the money. And if she wants to withdraw the money, it's going to be at a loss of anything between 80 to 90% of the value of its money, of Nawal's money.
A Bank Audi spokesperson told Reuters that restrictions are imposed by the Lebanese systemic crisis, not by Bank Audi, adding that the bank was generally keen to provide exceptional support, including to pay for medical care. But they did not say whether it had specifically allowed withdrawals for her family to pay for her care. Debs said Cheaito's case would be one of the most desperate if they could file the complaint. An open-ended strike in the court system has meant the union has been unable to file a complaint against Bank Audi for the last month.
The United States is considering limiting shipments of American chip-making equipment to memory chip makers in China, including Yangtze Memory Technologies, part of a bid to halt the second biggest economy's semiconductor sector advances and protect U.S. companies. That's according to 4 people familiar with the matter who said the crackdown, if approved, would bar such shipments to factories in China that manufacture advanced NAND chips, which store data in devices such as smartphones and laptops. The sources speaking on the condition of anonymity also said it could hurt South Korean memory chip juggernauts Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix if the Biden administration proceeds with the move. Samsung has 2 factories in China, while SK Hynix is buying Intel's NAND flash memory chips manufacturing business in China. The move also would seek to protect the only U.S. memory chip makers, Western Digital and Micron Technology, which together represent about a quarter of the NAND chips market. The crackdown would mark the first U.S. bid through export controls to target Chinese production of memory chips without specialized military applications, representing a more expansive view of American national security, according to export control experts. All the sources described consideration of the matter as in its early stages, with no proposed regulations yet drafted.
At first, Mexican migrant Pablo Ortega enjoyed the smuggling equivalent of a first-class ticket. Complimentary beers, safe houses with video games, even a week at a hunting ranch. But by June 27th, roughly 2 months after setting out for the U.S., he was dead, his life ending in the back of a sweltering tractor-trailer in Texas with 52 other migrants, in what is the deadliest U.S. smuggling incident in recent history. His journey provides a rare window into the world of human smuggling, an opaque, billion-dollar industry that is growing ever more deadly as border controls tighten and smugglers lure migrants with expensive routes they advertise as secure, special, or VIP. Hailing from the southeast state of Veracruz, Ortega, who was 19, paid $11,000 for his journey to the U.S., far above the average of between $2,000 to $7,000 for Mexican migrants, according to Mexican government data from 2019. His sister Rosa showed Reuters photos and videos he sent from a spacious, well-decorated home where he played video games and smugglers treated him to pizza and Tecate beer while they waited for Border Patrol presence to decrease.
And when they crossed, he told me that they made it, that they were at the house, that the most difficult part of the journey was the river, but that they made it to the safe house, and that they only had to take a trailer, that it would take 3 hours and then a car.
By June 19th, Ortega told his mom he was starting to worry about the number of migrants arriving to the Texas safe house. Then communication ceased. 8 days later, an abandoned 18-wheeler cargo truck was found in San Antonio, Texas, its partially open doors revealing stacks of bodies hot to the touch. The death count was 53, Ortega among them. A U.S. grand jury indicted 4 men on charges related to the incident. At the funeral in his hometown in mid-July, a ballad played remembering young migrants who suffocated in a Texas boxcar 35 years ago, with the lyrics saying, quote, "The air began to run out and there was nothing they could do. No one heard those cries for help." 2021 was the deadliest year on record for migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, according to UN data going back to 2014. 2022 is on track to keep pace, if not surpass that.